Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today's webinar is solving the bane of every MSP's existence, and that's, of course, getting paid on time. I'm your host, four-time Microsoft MVP and former MSP owner, Nick Cavalancia. Thanks for joining me today. Today's topic revolves really around this issue, just a common challenge that every MSP faces to one degree or another, and that's the idea of billing and collections, and trying to make both those things happen, very fluidly, very efficiently. And, we all know cash flow is king. I'm sure you've figured that out by now. If you stayed in business long enough, you got to have cash flow in order to stay in business, that sort of thing. So anytime it's a problem getting money or, making sure that it comes in on time, it might be a sign that you need to do something a little different. And so to educate you on how you can actually do that and overcome these billing and collection challenges, I'm joined today by Andy Henderson. He's Chief Marketing Officer at Connect Booster. Andy, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
Yep. Good talking to you again. A couple of housekeeping items real quick. I just want to go through here. The webinar is being recorded. If for some reason you need to duck out or you want to share this recording with a friend, you'll be getting an email in a couple of days with a link. So don't worry about that as well. We will have formal Q&A at the very end of today's webcast. But Andy, if it's okay with you, I'd like to leave the Q&A box up and open in front of me. And if there's a question that comes up that's more sort of contextually appropriate for what you're talking about, that I might be able to interrupt you and just sort of interject. Does that be okay?
That sounds fantastic.
Perfect. So for those in the audience, if you have a question, make sure you put it in the Q&A box and not in the chat. I'll try and check both, but it'd just be easier if you use the Q&A box. The chat is for you want to talk amongst yourselves, but the Q&A would be the formal place for us to look at those. So if you'd use that as well. And I think with that, Andy, I'm just going to go ahead and hand the reins to you. And if some questions come in, I'll interject. And when you're done, throw it back my way, and we'll do some Q&A at the end of today's presentation.
That sounds great, Nick. Again, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting Connect Booster to be a part of this discussion. We did this, I think we did one of these not that long ago. We were talking about cash flow as it relates to mergers and acquisition and valuations and things like that. And we kind of just teased a little bit about the actual mechanisms of getting paid on time. That was more about kind of the value of it to the, in terms of an exit type of perspective. This is more getting into the specifics on what is it that you can do, and more than just getting paid on time. This is like also, what a lot of you may be thinking, like, hey, I can do this, but what's it going to cost, and how much time is it going to take, and all this stuff. So we're gonna walk through all those items together. So with that, we'll jump right into this. In terms of what are we going to cover today? This is the secrets that 82% of MSPs don't know, and I've got some other statistics that I'm going to share throughout this, but this is kind of the way we're going to break it down. When it comes to invoicing and collections, sometimes, I'm kind of surprised by this as a former business owner myself, just letting people know that it's a bigger problem than you may think about, because when we talk to MSPs all the time, the first concern everybody has is making money, like adding new customers. It's usually the biggest concern, or the churn of customers and things like that. And the less sexy part of your business is usually the operational side, which tends to get overlooked at times. And so just maybe kind of really diving into why this is a bigger deal than some people may be aware. We'll talk about that. And then we'll go into the kind of the why is the struggle so real for so many MSPs, and really it's service-based businesses in general. It's not just limited to MSPs. That's what we're going to kind of talk about today. But why is this simple, idea of invoicing, collecting, why is it so dang difficult? Like, why does everyone seem to struggle with this? We're going to get to the root cause of that, and then of course we'll shift to a little bit about the best practices that we have heard from our customer base, and some of the things that we've shared with them. The proven processes that you can adopt to walk out of here today with a few practical tips and tricks and things that you can start looking at right now. Like literally today, you can walk out of here with a few things, hopefully, that you could bring to your customer base or your business right now and start seeing some improvements. And of course, I will spoiler alert, I am going to bring up a little bit about Connect Booster with your permission, to at least talk a little bit about what we do as a company, but I'll keep that pretty short. And then and finally, the last part, if you stick around to the very end, if you don't mind listening to me, I'll give something back to you, which is a pretty cool thing that we're going to share. So that if you stick around at the end, I'll share that as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. just real quick, so you know who I am and who Connect Booster is, if you haven't already heard of the brand Connect Booster. So my name is Andy Henderson. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Connect Booster. And our brand's been around about 12 years. We've worked with literally thousands and thousands of MSPs. We do work outside the channel a bit, but primarily that's the only people we service. The technology itself was built by MSPs for MSPs. It was built out of necessity. This was a problem that this was a solution to a problem that an MSP actually had, and that's why it came to be. Today, we're the largest, we're the most trusted, most integrated payment automation platform that exists in the IT channel. We have probably, I mean, the number obviously is always going up for us. There's 2,500 active partners, and I think in 2021 we processed somewhere around $1.6 billion. So we've been around for a little while. We are trusted by a lot of people with their transactions and their money. And the bottom line was really, we help MSPs put cash in your banks faster, cheaper, and more reliably than really anything else that we've ever run across. Period. Sort of end of story. So if you need any help with any of these things outside the best practices, we're always here to help. And this isn't going to be a pitch, but I just want to let you know who it is that you're talking to today. So with that, let's jump into the very first one. Why is this a big problem? Okay, so I did see Nick, the chat popped up here on my screen. I don't know how to show that. If there's a question, I'll just go ahead and let you read those, because I'm not sure how to open that up.
That's okay. It's just a comment from Melissa saying our company uses Connect Booster and it's been a time saver. Great for getting payments faster due to the postal service delays. Thank you, Melissa. We'll send you the $20 we owe you. No, that was unsolicited. So
right on cue. Thank you.
Nice to hear that. Yeah, I got those. No worries.
Thank you. If there's any other Connect Booster partners in here, don't share all the secrets that we're going to walk through. Please keep them till the end. But obviously, thank you for being a partner with us. All right, so I love to open with this because a lot of times I go to a lot of events, and when I talk to prospects, usually we ask them like, so tell us about, are you in the market for a payment automation platform, or your payments in general, or just what is your invoicing collections process? What does it look like? And typically we hear a lot of the same things, and it's something like this, like, there's not really any problem with my cash flow. What we're doing today, it works fine. Accounts receivable, yeah, there's some customers that don't pay, but most of them, they do pay on time eventually, right? And I don't know if that resonates with anybody here, but it's sort of the, it's not my biggest headache is what I'm really hearing. But when we ask them the second question, we usually get a pretty wildly different response. And that question is, what would the perfect scenario look like when it comes to sending out invoices and your customers paying you? And they typically paint more of a picture like this, and by the way, these pictures are from, we ran a video testimonial campaign where we reached out to our customer base and asked them to tell us, hey, what is it that you like about our product? And forget the product for a second. This is what they want life to be when it comes to this, sort of boring, stressful process. They want it fast. They want it easy. They don't want to pay any money for the money that's owed to them. Nobody likes burning extra hours at the end of the month doing all these tedious, time-consuming tasks. They don't want overtime. The bottom line is they just want it simple, and they want cash in the bank. And they want to be sitting in the hot tub, sipping martinis, smiling at their desk at month end, and being confident in the processes that they have. And when they describe, the first question, how's it going, versus what would I, perfect state look like? That's usually when we identify, well, there might be a few opportunities of things that you could be doing to make it a little bit better. So if we ask the questions, tell me what's wrong with your collections process right now. Almost always, especially if we're talking to the bookkeeper, the accountant, or in a lot of cases, if it's not it could be the MSP owner or a spouse. I hate month-end accounting tasks. Like, unless you're kind of that is really your passion, which is not a lot of people. Just the tasks, the month-end tasks are a real pain in the butt. And what it really means when you're talking to MSPs specifically, nobody has enough time. mean, this is, I threw up a few statistics in here because it's the reality that I think everybody on this call runs into, that it's a critical task, but we're largely doing it on our own. Most of us don't have a dedicated resource, or about half of us do. 75% of us are already working outside business hours, and this thing, I mean, it's feeding the baby. You'd have to do it every single month, 8 to 20 hours on average for SMBs. That's what this looks like. And this is already one of the most stressed, taxed industries that exists, because, I'm not going to tell you things that you guys already know about just the world we live in, but cyber security threats and the expectations from customers about uptime of technology and things like that. Like, time is the most precious asset that all of us have, and spending on tasks that, that are routine and redundant, they just, no one has time for it. The second one that always comes up, and I love this one too, is like, so I used to own my own business as well. I was a service company. I ran my own digital marketing agency, and I was the bookkeeper. I'm not a bookkeeper by trade, but I was the one that ran the books. I ran QuickBooks. I'd go through the accounts. It was variable billing because we were doing media spend, and we were, charging for that. So I had to go through the books every month, and I had to send it out, went through QuickBooks Online, and then, the payments would come in via credit card or however they'd pay us. And then I get this big old expense from Intuit. I don't know if anybody else experiences that, but like, it just drove me nuts to be paying money to collect the money that was mine. And what it really meant is that was, me personally as an owner, I viewed it as my money. And what it means for MSPs, like a lot of service-based businesses, our margins aren't that huge. We don't have giant pockets of cash to fall back on if we're not collecting consistently. Like, it's got to come from somewhere. And if that's you on this call, that can be a stressful time, because, if EBITDA on average for MSPs is in the, low double digits, you don't have a lot of margin. As SMBs all know, making money is the biggest problem we all face. And the older these things get, the less likelihood you have to collect on them. So your margins are critical. And this is probably the easiest insurance policy you have, is just to collect it as quickly as possible, consistently every month. That's why this is a big deal. Does it resonate with anybody? I don't know if that's why people are watching today, but to me, that was one of the big headaches that I experienced. And then the last one I'll throw up here, and perhaps the most important part is just, I hate my accounts receivable every month. Why don't my customers simply pay me? And what they're really getting at is cash in the bank is cash is king. Nick, you said it right when we hopped on the call here. That is the most important thing that to any business is making sure that you've got the cash, because it may look great according to your accountant on paper, book value and all that stuff, but cash flow is the killer of a lot of businesses. It keeps you up at night. I remember that, thinking about if you've got a lot of money tied up in a few key accounts, which was our agency, if they ever missed a payment because they didn't get the invoice on time or something like that, and I have payroll coming up in a few days, that was a really stressful time. And for these processes, getting this nailed down to a well-oiled machine it's a really important thing. And a lot of us don't like to talk about it because it's stressful and we don't feel like we're in control. But it's a reality, and you're in good hands. You're surrounded by people, hopefully, that are a little bit like you right now. And that's what we're going to unpack, is exactly how to fix that problem. All right. So hopefully that didn't shed any light on things that you didn't know, but it may have reminded you why this is a bigger deal. Like, if maybe perhaps your accountant or something like that, this is a bigger deal. This isn't just an operational problem. It's a strategic problem, right? So like it's truly a big deal. What I want to jump into next is why is this such a struggle for MSPs? And this is also something that I can relate to personally, because it seems like such a simple process, right? Like, every month, generate an invoice, send an invoice, money shows up. It's supposed to be a really, really simple thing, but the truth of the matter is, it's not. And statistically, I believe this was from a survey that we generated with our own partner base. Almost, 8 out of 10, more than 8 out of 10 MSPs wait at least 2 months to collect on the payments that they're owed. 80% of us. Like that's a really, really high number. And I thought about, like, when I first saw some of these statistics, I was like, why is that the case? And I thought back, and I've shared the story with a lot of different partners we talk to at events and trade shows and things like that. And here's my story, and I'm just curious. I want to share this because I'm curious if anybody else has run into this. When you start out as a company, as a business, I'm an engineer. I'm not a sales guy. So for me, it was always impressive when someone would be willing, to pay me cash to provide services. I knew I could do it, but for some reason I was always like, wow, they're really going to pay me for this. So it felt like I was really, honored to receive money from them. And I would accept it whenever they wanted to pay, however they want to pay, totally. Like, it's up to you, cool, I'll keep doing it because I'm the honorable person, I will do that work. And then sort of just somewhere along the way, you start to grow and you get bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually you start to outgrow that mentality, or at least on the sales side, but then on the collection side, it never catches up. And so suddenly you find yourself a year or two later, and you're doing great work. You have confidence your customers are going to pay you. You can handle it. You can grow. You can expand. You can hire people, but you never go back and close the loop on this collections part. And this is true. It happens over and over and over again. This is exactly how people get into the situation. And what it comes down to, and there's really only two reasons. Like, there's a whole lot of details around these and the kind of subcategories and things like that, but it's really just two reasons. This is the result of what the story I just told. Payment not required. Does anybody know where I'm going with this? I can't see anybody's hands, or I can't see the audience here, but like, payment not required. And what I mean by that is, as we surveyed a lot of these partners that we worked with, it comes down to expectations and when you set it and how you set it. And what we found is there's about 4 different things that we would run into. First of all, you don't even have the conversation, period, about the expectations around payments. But if you are having it, you may not be bringing it up soon enough. And so bringing it up early in the sales process is the easiest thing you can do, because that's the point where everybody will agree. It's a very reasonable expectation. We're going to do this work. You're going to pay us. Sound fair? Of course, everyone's going to agree to that at that stage of the game. Then you can remind them again during onboarding. Okay, cool. Just as we discussed, this is going to be this is the contract. This is the way we expect it. Here's the language you can use. By the way, if you need help with any of this stuff, we have templated language that we've provided to partners so that you can get it in the agreement in writing up front. And within that, that's where you have the opportunity to talk about penalties or incentives. You can do the stick or the carrot, and they both can be effective. But penalties for what happens, and we've talked about this too. You don't have to go straight to, you're a day late and I shut off your services. Like, obviously, there's a lot of trust put into MSPs because we're responsible for critical elements of their business, like shutting things off, user access and things like that is like the last thing. But this is an opportunity to spell out exactly what will happen if they have any challenges. And not to say that you're ever really going to, hopefully, ever have to follow through on that, but you do need to put the language in there that protects you and lets them know that you're serious about it. On the flip side, you can go to the incentive route where you can say, hey, if you want to sign up for auto pay or things like that, you can discount it or something like that, which obviously you market to a certain point, discount down when they set up auto pay and things like that, which just makes it easier for everybody. So put it in, have the conversation, discuss it during onboarding, and then include exactly what that means. And then make sure that you've got something about variable billing amounts, because that can trip up a lot of people too, because flat fee is a relatively easy thing to do, but most MSPs have some level of variability. We're measuring endpoints that constantly change. If you're doing break fix or whatever, there's, it's common nearly every single month. The billing amount could be different unless you're just straight, retainer flat fee, which is great. But unfortunately, that doesn't cover most of what the MSPs that we work with run into. So make sure you're setting up the expectations throughout. Cover these bullets. That's the easiest way to get in front of that. And most people don't do it. Does that make sense? Try not to go too fast here.
No questions have come in so far, so I think you're doing so fine so far.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so the second reason then, just follow the simple payment process. And like the three bullets before, like, all I do, create an invoice, send the invoice, collect the money. It's pretty straightforward. But if we did this process on my whiteboard a while back, and this is realistically more what it looks like. So this is far, I mean, and honestly, this is not even everything, but the point is to illustrate, like, it's a complex process. It's not simple, and it's the nature of the business that we work in, that we're doing work, we're tracking time, we're generating invoices, we're sending them out. Customers may or may not have questions that we got to circle back. Maybe we find mistakes, we got to resend it. Customers are going to pay us by one method or another. We take it to the bank. We got to find the payment amount, match it up to an invoice that matches to a ticket. You get the idea. There's a lot of steps in here, and by the nature of this process, it can be slow. And there's a lot of touch points in here that can break down because there's a lot of human touches, human error, and just by the nature of that, you're introducing failure modes, which slows down the process. And that's why. I mean, that's it. It's pretty simple. We're not making it required, and the process itself is just inherently fairly complicated, which makes it really difficult for us to get paid. On average, I think we counted this up. We talk to our partners all the time when we do our discovery calls. It's somewhere between, if you truly depends on what you count as a step, but 7 to 15 manual steps every single month. That's what we see. So that's a challenge, right? Like that's why this is a challenge for everybody to solve. Sorry, I'm blown up here. I didn't know if it was chat questions here. Okay, so what's the good news, right? Like that's sort of the, I don't want to be all doom and gloom and why this is a problem and there's inherently nothing you can do about it. Here's the good news. There's a lot of things you can do about this, and whether you leverage technology or not, there's still a lot of things that you can do. So we're going to break this down into 3 pieces. And some of these might seem fairly obvious, but they're always obvious once you bring them up. So there's 3 main parts. First of all, make it mandatory. Payments is not optional. Just like 97% uptime is what your customers are demanding of you and your technology, you're demanding the same back. It's very fair. So how do you do it? Well, put it in writing. Set the expectations early. So when you're having sales conversations, you're having discovery conversations, you're mapping out your master services agreement, you know what you're going to be doing. Put it in writing on the flip side of exactly what the expectations will be, and then be prepared to follow through with it. It's as simple as that. This still blows me away, the number of partners that we talk to that don't have what the expectations are. They don't put it in writing in their contracts. Now I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's a fear thing. It's just there's a lot of documentation out there on exactly how to do it. And yet it's one of the easiest things that literally every single MSP should already be doing, but a lot of people don't. Like I said, if you're running into challenges with that, there's a lot of places to go for help. I mean, Google's obviously your friend, but there's peer groups. On our Connect Booster help site, we list some example language that you can certainly borrow and model after. But the first thing is definitely make it mandatory, and then be prepared to follow through. Make sure you have the relationships with these accounts. No one wants to turn off technology, but usually you don't have to get to that point. Of the MSPs that we talk to, I mean, I've talked to a lot of very successful partners, and they say almost never do they actually have to follow through. I mean, putting it into the contract and then picking up the phone and saying, hey, Nick, just checking in on you, want to see how things are going these days. We noticed we didn't get your payment. Want to see if anything was up. Is there anything you need from us? As a reminder, if we're having challenges and we need to part ways, we totally understand. We'll get things turned off for you, but just want to check in before we get to that point. Boom, check show up. It's not that, you know what I mean? Like it's not that difficult, and it doesn't have to be threatening. It can be friendly. It just be part of, hey, this is what we do. This is what we expect from you guys. Any questions with that? You start with the most obvious one first.
Yeah, no questions have come in yet. So.
Okay. Now the second one, and this one can be a little bit more challenging, but I'm an engineer by background, mechanical engineering, not the software type. I know Nick, you're an engineer as well, so I think this is something that for a lot of MSPs are technical engineering people too. So hopefully this makes sense. And just applying the same logic you do to just about anything else in your business, apply it to your payment process. And what I'd recommend doing is build a process that you can repeat and break it into smaller bite-sized pieces. And the main elements that people get hung up on would be the invoicing part, the payments or the collection part, and then kind of closing out month end. And figuring out what are the pieces within this that you can consistently do every single month perfectly. Make sure that you know the information that you need to create and execute these. Make sure you have the resources. Make sure that they're getting the information when they need it. But figure out those steps and build the process into bite-sized chunks that you can control, which is the second part. Figuring out, so going through this process, I mean, I did Six Sigma training once upon a time. We did a lot of that in my former life, and building these, we did a lot of these manufacturing, failure mode and effects analysis, charts and things like that. And you'd figure out of all of these mini steps, invoice, collect, reconcile, there's going to be inputs that you can control and inputs that you can't. And for the ones that you can control, make sure you put controls in them. And just as a really simple example, if it's on the invoicing side, when do the invoices need to go out? They go out on the first, they go out on the last day of the month, whatever. What information needs to be in there? Where does that information come from? Who's the person responsible for doing it? What's the backup if that person isn't available? How do we get that information in? When does the information need to be in there? Like if you can get all of those things controlled, you're going to have at least a fighting chance. And I know what some of you may be thinking. We're doing all of that already, right? And that's where you might be running into challenges with scaling. And that was something that unfortunately I had, which is, by the way, congratulations if you've got that problem, because it means you're growing your business. But it's a problem nonetheless, where we grew our business from almost a dead stop to about $1 million of annual top line revenue in about 18 months. And by the end of that, invoicing got to be a little hairy for me because I was the only person doing it. But the point is, as you build a process, you need a human that's responsible for this quantity of invoices. And at some point, you're going to hit a breaking point. You need another body, or you need to contract out to an accounting firm or something. But the point is, you're looking at it and you're controlling the things that you can control. And then the last one, I mean, this is, again, kind of common sense, but when we're talking about making it automatic, efficiency is the key. So within those process steps, you've got invoice, collect, reconcile, you've got all these inputs. Is there anything in there that can eliminate or at least minimize human touches? Because human touches typically are breaking points. And so if there's anything that you can do, and this is where we get into things like technology, reminders. I mean, use the technology that you have. I mean, some of this is fairly, we have tools that make it easier. Just putting things on calendars was the simplest thing that I could do I had an entirely manual process. I didn't have any technology other than, I could use QuickBooks to send out invoices. Like that was the only thing I could send it, but that didn't put money in the bank. It didn't reconcile when money came into my bank account. Like there was still a lot of manual things. All I did is I went to my calendar, and on the repeating reminder on the specific day of the month that I had the task that I had to do as it related to all these pieces. And that worked for me for a while until we grew, in which case we hired an accountant. And that's what you can do. Make it automatic. Make it so that you can't screw it up. That's the easiest thing you can do is make this process as automatic as possible.
Hey, Andy, let me just interject something here as
Sure.
I'm thinking about this. Back when I owned an MSP, and I still own 2 businesses today, I always tell people that predictability breeds profitability. And that's really important, because that's what you're talking about here with making it automatic is, while profitability, getting the money doesn't make you any more profitable because it just helps with the cash flow, but it does make you more profitable from that standpoint, I think, that you're hinting at, which is, what do you mean you never collected that money from that customer 4 months ago? I mean, that
Right.
kind of stuff. We've been, we've held back on other things. It certainly would help. And that's the whole point here. And doing this in a way that, I don't know if you're gonna talk about integration. I want to steal your thunder or anything, but integration with other parts of their business. And then it becomes something that is predictable. You just know that it's going to get built out. Tom actually mentions here, says we require a credit card file a credit card, excuse me, on file, and all recurring invoices are charged against the credit card. Problems start when you have to provide service to time and materials clients who maybe don't actually sign a contract, which of course we don't like. We started to use an quote unquote engagement form that states what is expected, but they just ask, invoice us. We're still at their mercy, refusing to provide further service until the invoice is paid. Does little good with these occasional clients. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, yes, that's a challenge. Several thoughts on that. First of all, yes, predictability is the key. When it comes to predictable cash flow is probably one of the most, like, I hate to say misunderstood, but like, you just assume it's going to happen. Like when you build a business, you don't think about that. No one's thinking like, hey, what if customers don't pay me on time? What are you going to do? You still have bills. You still have to pay things. Where's it coming from? And by the way, most of the time it means you're putting on your own credit card, you're not paying yourself, or you're getting a business loan. Like those are some of the options. Well, in all cases, there's interest, there's additional costs associated with all of those. And if you're not passing that through when your customers aren't paying you, that means you're eating in your margins. That's the only place that it goes, right? Like you are giving interest-free loans to your customers. You know what I mean? Like that is the harsh reality of what that means. Let's hear. In terms of the question, it sounds like there are multiple pieces of that.
Just more or less, it's just he's got time and materials customers, and their occasional clients. So what do you suggest for them, or do you have it's not a recurring revenue type of thing. This is just right. And they want them to come back and say invoice again, but they haven't paid the last invoice, kind of a thing.
Well, I wouldn't do any more work for someone who hasn't paid you for the last job.
Yeah. I have an off-topic answer for you, Tom, as well. By the very nature of your question, this is not meant to be a criticism, but by the very nature of your question, it stands to reason that you're probably not at the point where you can say no. And it's a really powerful place to be in business, is we can go, no, I don't want to do that work. When you literally get to turn down money, that's a great place to be. I don't mean in copious amounts of money. We all need to pay our bills, but where you go, I don't like doing that. Yeah. My son tried working for himself once, and he got into a bind where he didn't have money coming in and whatever. And I said, he was basically calling me to go, Dad, will you give me a loan? Which the answer was, I'm not giving you a loan. But I said, you know what I do when stuff like this has happened before? So I work really hard to make sure it never happens again. He didn't like that answer. It was the right answer for the situation, which is, I'm not going to give you the money to pay your bills. You should have worried that you have to hustle, get more customers, get more. And so I would encourage you, if there's a part of your business, what I'm assuming I'm inferring from what you wrote, that there's a part of your business that certainly is some kind of defined services. There's a scope of engagement. There's recurring revenue, those kinds of things. I would just try to hustle, figure out how many more customers, or what, do I need to get like another half customer to replace those guys, and then just pass them off to somebody else, because it's not worth it in some cases, especially if you can get another customer instead that'll just pay you with a recurring revenue stream and will pay the invoices on time, et cetera, et cetera. Just get to a point where you can say no. That's generally where I think, again, sort of off topic, but
it's spot on though. I mean, I love that you said that, because it's something that you kind of forget about, somewhere along the way, when you go from like these early stages, we're just hoping someone will pay me anything. But somewhere you hit like a, kind of an inflection point where it's like, do we need this next money, like to pay the bills? Because that first stage is like, just get enough that we can make money. Like that's where we want to get. But once you cross over that threshold, you should start to be a lot more critical over the next clients you take on, as well as your existing customer base. And so we used to do this, and it was like, every month we would go through our kind of our monthly business review or client review, and we would pick out like relentlessly our favorite 90% and our least favorite 10%. I mean, I hate to say it, but we would do it. And the reason is like, the digital
off with their heads.
Yeah. And in some ways that was the question, like, is it time to part ways with them? Like, are these fixable things? Is this a short-term thing? Or is this client like a recurring pain in the butt for various reasons? And at some point, how many resources are you applying to the biggest headaches versus the biggest opportunities?
Agreed.
And it's easy to fall into that trap. And there is nothing like more liberating than to go, you know what? We are firing this client. And like this, just like relief comes off. Like, I just never wanted to deal with that person again. And for them to let go, then all of a sudden it just seemed like clockwork. All of a sudden, boom, a prospect would fall in our lap like the next day. that we probably wouldn't have time to entertain, and we've been focused on this other one, and boom, we're off to the races.
Yeah, Tom says it's pretty much the way that that they're handling it, just turning down unless they sign a credit card authorization beforehand, which at least is his way of, they've agreed to pay the bill when the bill comes in, and obviously there's issues like if the credit card doesn't go through, but it's best effort, and I love that, and I concur completely, Andy. I would just go down that path and try to get to a point where you can say no. It's very powerful. I got to tell you that, very powerful.
From a competitive perspective, doesn't it feel good to know that you're releasing that partner to your competitors? Like, let them go have them. You know what I mean?
Have at it. I've
Someone else's headache. That's great.
Someone else's nightmare. Yeah, as you were. No other questions. So keep going, Andy.
Right on. All right. So the last one we're going to be chatting about here. Let's see if I can make sure I'm getting this to work. Same thing. Also sounds obvious, but make it easy as possible for your customers. So a lot of what we're talking about here is making it easy for you. When I say automatic, really what we're getting is making it easy so you don't forget it, and you don't make mistakes and it goes out at the same time and all that stuff. But don't forget to make it easy on your customers too. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of times it seems like more often than not, maybe in this case, what Tom was bringing up, maybe not the case, but more often than not, your customers want to pay you. The challenge we often run into is we don't make it very easy. And by not making it easy, there's a handful of things that could entail. Transparency in billing is one of the easiest things to fix, but it does take a little bit of work, where creating like a custom template, invoice template in QuickBooks is something you can do, that you can create up the first time. And then you can itemize the things so that when the accountant on the receiving end gets the invoice, they know what the heck this bill was for. Because a lot of times if they get an invoice, if they're trained, like ours were, they didn't pay a bill if they didn't know what it was. And if it just says invoice $500, they weren't paying it. You know what I mean? Or at least I would tell them, hey, unless I know what it is, or a recurring thing, I know what it is. Offer transparency. Make sure that they know exactly what they're paying for. And I realize in some cases, if you're changing endpoints, you got hours or whatever, it puts more burden onto you to provide that information in your invoicing platform. But that's what your customers need. Make it easy for them. Don't give them a reason to offer friction and not do the next step and compensate you. Make it easy for them. I'll mention this. Payment flexibility is a big deal too. And this is kind of a double-edged sword, so I'll say it, make it easy, but when I say flexibility, find out what works for them. Like, have that conversation early in the sales process when you're writing your statement of work. Tell them what your typical practices are. We send out on the 1st, we process payments on the 5th, or they're due on the 30th, or whatever it is. Set the rules. How does that sound to you, Mr. or Mrs. end user? And find out what they prefer. Do they prefer to write checks? Let's understand why. Would you be open to electronic checks, ACH payments? If they like the points on their credit card, no problem. We'll accept payments. We do offer a convenience fee. We'll waive it if you set it on auto pay. There's things like that, but make sure you're meeting them in the middle and have the conversation so that you can eliminate any challenges where they get an invoice, they don't know what it is. I'm only allowed to pay a certain way that I don't particularly care for. And the last one is, this is one I put it on here specifically when it comes to the process itself, because there's a million ways for this to break down. But one of the top reasons we run into is our partners just don't send the invoice out on the same day every month. That sometimes they send it on the 30th, they get busy, they send it on the 10th. Well, what do you expect? You know what I mean? Like if you're not making it easy for your customer, they're certainly not going to pay you on time if you don't invoice them consistently. So if there's one step in the process that you want to make sure that you're doing, it's get your invoices out consistently with the correct information, and offer to meet somehow, have the technology, have whatever it is to offer the payment methods that your customers prefer, that puts the cash in your bank consistently on your end at an expense that makes sense for you. Make it as easy as possible as you can for your customers. All right. Now, I did say that I would at least talk about Connect Booster for a minute. For those of you that already are, if we have any other additional partners, you can tune out for a quick second. I only have a couple slides, just hitting on the highlights here. But the point of a lot of this is this technology was built explicitly to solve a lot of the problems that I just went through. What is Connect Booster? It's account receivable automation platform, which is a fancy way of saying it helps our customers send out invoices and collect money automatically. We do it. We eliminate manual steps, which means you get rid of expenses. We help eliminate fees with ACH payments or pass-through fees of credit cards and things like that. And we make it predictable, exactly what Nick was saying. You know when the money comes in. There was another one of the testimonial campaigns that we did. I love the way, I'm trying to remember, drawing a blank on the gentleman's name, but he said, you know what happens on the 1st of the month? We send out our invoices. You know what happens on the 5th of the month? All of them are paid in cashes in the bank. Everything is set up on auto pay. It's reliable. He knows exactly what's going to happen every single month. And that's what Connect Booster does. And I'm not going to go through all the feature set, but what you get with this in terms of making it mandatory, we don't necessarily make it mandatory. You still got to write the agreements. You still got to have the contracts. You still got to have the conversations and things like that. But we help you make it automatic for yourself. Automatic variable billing, automatic reminders, automatic statements, transparency, pass-through fees, automatic. We can update the credit card numbers automatically, and the payments show up automatically. Those are all the pieces of that whole spaghetti diagram that happen automatically. And for your customers, it's all about making it easy for them. They get a custom branded portal for whatever your smart IT, whatever your brand is, colors, whatever you want. They can log into it 24/7. They can see the invoices. They can see past payments. This is totally PCI compliant for those of you who care about making sure that you've got your security on lockdown, which I'm assuming is all of you. That was kind of supposed to be a joke. Flexible payment schedules. They can pick when their payments process, and you know when to expect that happening. We have non-login options for people who just want to pay a bill based on an invoice, the invoice that they get electronically. You can select different payment methods. You can do ACH, you can do credit card, multiple credit cards. You can split payments, whatever. It's all up to the customer. So those are the pieces that we try to help you do, and we do this affordably. I mean, realistically, we do variable-based billing in terms of our customers. So we've got a floor and we've got a ceiling, and anything else you pay for what you use. And it's basically, for most people, it's about the cost of about 1 or 2 billable hours, depending on what you pay or what you charge for your customers. So we think this is about as reasonable as you can get. And that's where I'll stop my spiel. If you want to know more about it, you can certainly hop on the phone with any of our specialists. Reach out to me if you're interested more on that. Any questions?
Yeah, there's a couple questions. One came from Jeff. Jeff said, what credit card gateways do you support in Canada? It's awfully specific, but I like that.
So international is something that we're exploring a lot more heavily. I'm afraid I would give you poor information because we're changing some things right now. If I get your name, I will reach out to you directly, or I'll have someone on our partner success team reach out, because I don't know the answer to that question. I know we do offer processing through Canada. Connect Booster, we work with a lot of processors, and this is kind of a technical question, so I'm sorry if this is not relevant to a lot of folks, but that gives us a huge portfolio of competitive rates. That's why we can save a lot of our partners a lot of money, and it opens up a lot of different geos and specialties for end users. So that's how we work. We're constantly evaluating new ones. And on the Canada side, I know we have a few different options that we're working with right now, so I don't want to give you bad information.
Someone else, Dell, mentioned processing in Canada for him is done through Wordline and Bambora. I'm not familiar with
Bambora, yes, correct.
That's okay. So I have kind of a general question for the audience, because there's still a number of you that are here. Most of you have stayed here till the end, and you don't have any questions. But I know from my own experience, both when I was an MSP and even now, I own 2 businesses that are service businesses, but they're totally different. They're in tech marketing and that kind of thing. But billing is still an issue. What didn't Andy talk about? I mean, there's something about billing and collections is why you came here, but you don't have any questions. So I'm just wondering, what didn't he talk about? Even if it's a topic, even just put in the Q&A box and go, okay, Tom says past due accounts. So maybe we could talk about maybe how you help with some of that. And the rest of you, just a couple topics would be good, just to make sure we're hitting this, so that even though you don't have a specific question, you're going, really wish you would have talked about, in like Tom's case, past due accounts. So put something in the Q&A box or in the chat, either or, I don't care. And Andy, thoughts on past due accounts, maybe just from a standpoint of, conceptually what to do, and then also maybe how you help.
Well, past due, unfortunately, there's not a lot of great answers on that. You know what I mean? Like you've unfortunately gotten yourself into a situation that is not great. I mean, the obvious answer is fix the problem. You know what I mean? Like, you got to protect yourself before you can worry about damage that's already been done. So first thing is stop and prevent additional damage from happening. Okay, let's go figure that out. On the flip side of like, what do you do with past due accounts? I mean, at some point you got to have a heart with yourself and decide, kind of like you're saying, Nick, is this a partner we want to continue to work with? I mean, there's the, going down legal routes and things like that. I mean, yes, you can go do that. The reality of those, yeah, you'll probably collect some money, but that process is usually ugly and it takes time and energy and, the emotional stress and things like that. Depends on what it's worth. A lot of times when you're in that spot, that partner has probably got deeper root cause issues that are, unless you're just really terrible at at the services you're providing, which we're going to assume is probably not the case. Your customer is going through something that they don't like, right? Like they're struggling themselves. Maybe I don't know. But if they're in that scenario, unfortunately, I mean, the thing that we always had to consider when our agency is if someone starts getting behind, I just immediately go to, there's a good chance that this is going to be someone we're going to have to part ways with. Just start there and hopefully you can recover it. And it's, it's outreach, it's getting the right people involved, try and deep dive, find out what's wrong. Sometimes we would set up, like payment systems or whatever to get them back on track. I do remember one time we had a partner, that's exactly what happened. The guy was just kind of came on some hard times, really honest, sincere, amazing guy. And he came up with a payment plan that he was comfortable with and he got back on track. And we basically just threw the line in the sand and say, look, we understand it, we get it. We're either going to have to part ways and no one wants to do that, or because we were doing his marketing, of course. So it's like, if I lose you, then I lose the revenue that I do have. And we said, well, look, you got to give us something. You got to meet us in the middle. He agreed to pay a bit more than his monthly amount. We got back on track, took about 6 months, and the guy blew up, so it can have a good story, but I mean, you do have to pay attention to it and just recognize, that it may not work out.
Tom mentioned that they fired the customer, but they have a large balance. And I remember a situation years ago, Tom, where I met a guy. This is not a business like I can refer you to. This is just they exist in concept. It's a guy whose basic job is there. It's a business where they do collections, and it's not like you're sending them to a collections agency where it goes on their credit, but you're going to give them a percentage of whatever they can collect. And they will hound them and call them and email them and call them and text them and, carrier pigeon and smoke signal, whatever they have to do to get those people understanding you got to pay this bill. And they just get a percentage. Cause I mean, getting 60% of something, or I'm making up a percentage, is better than 100% of nothing. And if it's that case, they have a large balance, I would go that route. I would give it to somebody and let it be their hassle. And they're just, berate these people. And the guys that I met were not nice. This was like phone versions of guys that would break your kneecaps, but in a phone version of it, and it's just terrifying people. And you want to find one of those. You want to find a Vinny and Vito collection agency. And no offense to any Vinny's or Vitos on the call today, or anyone listening to this recording later on. But a Vinny and Vito collection agency. I'm a Paisan, so I can say that. And but that's what I would recommend. Anyways, another question came in from an anonymous attendee. I just like how long that is. Just say anonymous. It says, what accounting systems do you work with? And they mentioned QuickBooks, Sage, NetSuite, ?
Yes, if you go to our website, we'll list them all. But yes, we work with QuickBooks, QuickBooks Online, Xero, Sage Intacct, Microsoft Dynamics, and I feel like I'm forgetting one off the top of my head, but most of the major ones. And there actually are third-party integrations out there that we're not familiar with that may connect with us and connect to additional things. But I mean, hopefully that connects to most options. If you don't mind, is there one specifically that, if you don't mind chatting what it is, I can also find out if something we could help you with if you're interested.
Yeah, we need to get that answer live because they're anonymous. We don't know who they are.
We can't super secret.
It's a competitor asking, just to make sure you didn't
just curious.
Slip or something. I don't know. Who knows?
All of them.
It looks like we got through all of the commentary. I think I'm double checking here. I know we've answered all the questions. I'm going to wait and stall for 15 more seconds or whatever before we close things out. But in the meantime, Andy, thank you for joining us. Thanks to Connect Booster for sponsoring this. Oh, the anonymous attendee says Sage Intacct, which I think you mentioned. Okay, yes. Thumbs up. We got a thumbs up on that one. Good. Okay. There you are, Mr. or Mrs. Attendee. You're good. So anyway, Andy, thanks for a good presentation. Appreciate you being here. And thanks to Connect Booster for sponsoring this. Is there any final call to action slide you want to leave up here, just so the audience sees what to do next?
I did want to throw this out here. I promise for the 23 of you that are still here, we do have a special gift. Everything that we covered in this, or a lot of what we covered in this, is in. We've got this ebook. It's like, to me, this is the comprehensive guide of everything you could possibly want to know, and then some. And if you'd like a copy of it, totally free. Shoot me an email directly. I'll send it directly to you. I won't send you to a landing page where you got to put your information. Just directly email me. I'll send it to you. If you have any questions, happy to answer anything that I can. Apologies for the cannot question that I couldn't answer, but I will get back to you. Same thing if you'd like to know. Shoot me a note. Happy to help.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, everyone. Appreciate your attendance today. This concludes today's webcast. We'll catch you guys on the next one. All right, bye-bye.